Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Rethink Culture, the podcast that shines a spotlight on leaders of businesses that people love to work for. My name is Andreas Constantinou. I'm your host, and I see myself as a micromanager who turned servant leader, and in the process developed a personal passion for workplace culture. At Rethink Culture, we're on a mission to help 1 million businesses create a healthier, more fulfilling culture at work. And we do that by helping you measure your culture so you can manage it. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming a friend and a colleague and someone who is very accomplished on the area of culture, who is Natacha Neumann. Natacha is based in Berlin, and she is the founder and manager of Erdbär, a company dedicated to marketing healthy snacks for kids under the brand Freche Freunde, if I pronounce this correctly, which means cheeky friends in German. Her personal goal when founding the company is to improve the eating habits of children. And she has transformed the culture of the organization using a self-managed, structured, inspired by Holacracy, which we'll tell us more about. She has since sold this business, and she's now working on a few projects which are a labor of love, as she tells me. So getting leaders to become more conscious about their leadership style and the organizations they're building. She's working on a coaching company. She's working on a private equity vehicle to transform company culture. And she's also helping improve the educational system in Germany. So fingers in many pies. Plus, she's also the proud mother of 3 beautiful children. She has lived in 10 countries, and she has also graduated from the Cordon Bleu School of Cuisine. So she's also a chef. So we can get to talk about leadership and cooking. So very welcome to the Rethink Culture podcast, Natacha.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Lovely to be here.
So many questions, and I don't know where to start, but I guess we should start from telling us a little bit about the company you founded, Erdbär, and more importantly, help us understand a little bit about yourself and the journey you took, where you grew up, and what were your childhood influences that helped you become who you are today.
Okay, so I'll start at the beginning. I grew up, as you just said, in a lot of different countries. So I was moving pretty much every few years, which for me showed me different perspectives, taught me to adapt very fast. So I'm very thankful for that experience. My parents, my father was in corporate finance, and eventually also founded his own company. So he taught me a lot of values of hard work, responsibility, achievement. And to balance that out, my mother was a stay-at-home mom that had the biggest heart and taught me the power of unconditional love. So that's a little bit the environment in which I grew. Um, and so I went to study, and I did most of my education in English, despite the fact that I'm French. I'm originally French. And I studied in business. I did masters in business in the UK and then in Spain. Worked in corporate world for a while because that was the thing that you did after doing an MBA. You got a job at a multinational company and a graduate program, and I did that for a while, and eventually realized it's all fine. Yeah, there's nothing too bad with it. It's all fine, but I'm not fulfilling my needs and my values of having an impact. Yeah, I mean, I felt like just a pawn in a very big game, and I was implementing other people's ideas. I wasn't having true impact. I didn't feel a sense of autonomy, of freedom that I could really do what I wanted to do. So, based on these two things, I quit the day job and went on a bit of a soul searching, which after um, a bit of a process and trying different things, including cooking school, I ended up by founding my own company, Freunde in Germany. I was at the time of quitting my job. I was still living in Mexico, so I found my way back to Europe via Switzerland, and then landed here in Berlin, and founded Freunde with a purpose. Yeah, for me, it was I never found it to get rich or successful. I found it to have this impact and this purpose of getting kids to have a healthy eating habits for life seemed to be the most worthwhile purpose I could follow. And it was a simple rationale of, what's the most important thing in the world? The most important thing was for me at the time health. What's the most important thing in health is nutrition, and what's the best way to impact nutrition? Let's start with the children.
Were
And
you a mother at that time?
I was not a mother yet. So this was really just a thinking process. Yeah. I was cognitively thinking, where can I have the greatest impact in this world? And that took me to children's nutrition.
And how did that purpose change as you became a mother? Or how did your focus change as you became a mother?
No, I'm not sure my focus changed. I mean, obviously it broadened. I was looking at it very much on just nutrition. And I think good habits, I would probably take out the word habits. It developed the right, good mindset as a child, for lifelong habits of, being happy and being fulfilled in life. I think that's changed over the time. But the focus for the company stayed nutrition, because obviously in the company purpose needs to stay very, very focused. And exactly, and grew that within Germany. And it was, I was also very lucky. I came and founded the company when the market was very, very ripe for it. I started a new category. So I had first mover advantage in a new category where the market was ripe. So, success was almost guaranteed, even if I had messed up. And I did a lot of mistakes along the way, as I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs also do. But I learned a lot on, step by step, and thanks to a very thankful market, the company grew and grew and grew and grew.
How fast did it grow? And I think you started the business with your husband, right? Which is also interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. So I started with my husband because he had a similar feeling. So he started having similar feelings after me. I quit my job about a year before him. But he also started to have, I think that's been a secret of our relationship. We go through similar phases very much because we have very open conversation, and we philosophize a lot about life and where things are going. So he ended up by a very similar position than me, feeling the frustration of lack of impact and autonomy. And so, yeah, so it seemed like a logical thing to found this company together, which has been also one of the greatest decision in my life to have my partner, my better half, also my business partner. It's been a secret to part of our success as well. And the company grew. Yeah, you say how fast did it grow? It grew very. I mean, the first couple of years we were just the two of us. I mean, we were bootstrapped. I mean, we've got angel investors, but still, considering how fast we were growing, we had less than 1 million in funding in the first years, and for that, getting into 3,000 markets and developing multiple products, and then quickly the team, having to build a team around that. So quickly we were 6, 7, 8, and then we were on television, the equivalent to a Shark Tank here in Germany, and then business doubled again overnight, and and then doubled again the next year, and it was basically continuous reinventing ourselves as a company, reinventing myself, my role as a founder and leader, and a very steep learning curve.
Something I appreciate in you, Natasha, is your very balanced leadership style, which is you balance female energy with male energy. You're very understanding and compassionate, but you're also very firm and focused and demanding. How, like, do you consciously see these two leadership styles in yourself?
I changed over the time. So I told you earlier about my parents, which embody probably the typical, I'd say, male and female energy. And my father being very, very uh, old generation male type of leadership, and my mother on the other extreme of the spectrum, having a lot of empathy. Um, and But I was not always this way. So I think also growing up in a world of men. Yeah, I mean, I have an older brother, and most of my friends in school were men. Um, I went to business school, so yeah, surrounded probably more by what we traditionally know by the male energy, or what's recognized as um, the the old way of leadership. That's what I had turned into. Yeah, I mean, I had to prove myself as a woman in a business world, so I was tough. Yeah, I was tough because it was expected of me to be tough, because weakness and emotions were not allowed. And I've only actually got in touch with my female energy through the transformation of my company. I realized getting in touch with that part of me that somehow I had lost touch with. And often say I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I started as a woman, more from the male energy, because maybe that made it more easy for me to get back in touch with the things that make me a woman, probably more so than men. I don't know. I'd put it out there as a hypothesis, but this is something. Yeah, this is something I learned over the time. Yeah, being able to. I mean, I used to split very much, and this sounds crazy because I found it with my husband, but I used to very much split my personal life from my work life, my emotional life from my functional life, um, and it's the moment that I discovered that it can't be split. Otherwise, you're splitting yourself. You are cutting yourself in two. That I realized that the power of actually doing that, the power actually in being having emotion at work, yeah, the power that it creates in human connections through being open, being emotional, not putting up walls. But this is something I had to learn.
So you found you saw the benefits in integrating the female style of leadership with a male style of leadership, or female energy and male energy in leadership, right? This is what I'm hearing.
Yes, but it took a lot of courage. Yeah, it took a lot of courage
Mm.
because well, probably several things. Society doesn't necessarily hasn't shown to reward that. Firstly, and secondly, well, the male form of leadership had served me well. Yeah, it got me to where I was. I was at that point. I was already founder of a successful company. So yeah, this going back on these old habits and
Mhm.
changing definitely took a lot of courage.
How important is this balance of male and female energy in leadership when it comes to conscious leaders? That is
I
a topic you're passionate about.
Yeah. I think it's super important, and I try and not talk about it necessarily male and female, because I think it
Hmm.
gets it gets
Yeah,
stigmatized. It's
yeah,
women should be female and
yeah.
men should be males. So I think that's super important to say. I completely understand um, what you mean by it, and I use those terms as well. I try not to always use them because I feel there's this stigma there.
Hmm.
Um, it's for me what we're now talking about for the female energy. It's very much this being in touch with other people, being in touch with oneself first of all. I mean, it's the source of consciousness. It's firstly, yeah, being able to reflect and get to those emotions, being able to recognize my own needs behind those emotions, and then through that, really being able to connect with other people, and that connecting can only happen once I've connected to myself, and I can only lead other people once I've managed to lead myself. And I can only do that if I firstly understand who am I, what am I thinking, what am I feeling, and what am I wanting. And it sounds very, I mean, it sounds sounds very basic. It is actually very basic. I do think it's how we were born. Yeah, it's going back to somehow our natural way of being. But because of everything that happens in the growing up process, and I'm seeing it now incredibly with my children. One of my child is currently becoming a teenager, and this switch that happens between childhood, where everything is possible, there's no limits to imagination, there is a natural self-confidence, there's a deep-rooted goodness, yeah, and feeling for other people. This somehow gets a little bit destroyed as we turn to adults. Yeah, and it's I experience it, I say, with my own children. So I don't think as we as parents have the sole responsibility. I mean, it's the environment in which they're growing up, it's the schools in which they're growing up. It's
Yeah.
yeah. But
We
this is
have
yeah. Say.
in society, I think we have created the conditions inadvertently for us to become functional and high performance individuals, and focus on output and outcome rather than knowing ourselves and being in touch with ourselves and being reflective of, or reflecting on who we are, how we are showing up, how we're what impact we're making every day into the world. And for some
Yeah.
reason, this has all been down prioritized for performance and output, which actually is very close to the calling of the podcast. And like most leaders, vast majority of leaders, if not all the leaders that are praised in mainstream media, as I was describing to you before we started recording, they're praised because they are achieving exits, building technology, creating things that other people admire for the output of their company. This is what they're admired for, but very, very rarely, if at all, for the empathy, the culture they're building at in their organizations, for the conditions they create for their staff to love the work that they do and to make sure that they bring their best selves to work, and that work gives them meaning, inspiration, and they return home with a smile, and they make a positive impact to their families and their communities.
Yeah.
So again, it's a very similar parallel between performance and connection.
Yeah. And that's the, at some point in the Industrial Revolution, it made sense that we create humans that conform and just produce.
Mm-hmm.
In our day and age, we need to go back to what makes us human, especially with the
Mm-hmm.
AI taking over all those manual processes. We need to relearn to be the children, yeah, to be creative,
Mm-hmm.
to be human, to have human connections. And I love the fact, Lisa, leaders are recognized for the wrong things. And I want to share with you a very personal story. When I sold a large part of the shares of my company, before transforming the culture, a lot of people congratulated me, said, "That's amazing. You've reached what a lot of entrepreneurs try and reach. You've got that goal, achieved." And I felt so terrible. The more people were congratulating me, the worse I was feeling. The more I felt like I haven't achieved anything. Yeah, I've got now a few euros in my bank account. Who cares? Yeah, this is not what I set off to do, and this is not what has the real impact. And it was one of the triggers of really going for a cultural change within the company, because I said, I want to leave this company with my head up high, that I've done something good in this world, that I've done something good for the people here. And I left the company years later with that head up high, feeling so proud. Nobody congratulating me anymore. Yeah, it was, who cares? Yeah, this was that I had the important things I had achieved before, yeah, high growth and professional success. But I went out with my head high, saying, now I've done good. Now I can go.
And a view, this is a view we rarely hear, right? Because I
Yeah,
also congratulated you earlier on selling your company, and at the same time was thinking, you know, okay, how meaningful is that?
yeah,
And how much less meaningful to actually making an impact to the lives of people.
yeah.
So, talking about making an impact to the lives of people, what was the eureka moment, if there was one, or inflection point that led you to change the culture at Erdbär?
Mm. So it was a process. I'm not sure there was one magical moment, or there probably several magical moments. I went through a couple years of feeling that something's not right. Yeah, I couldn't really put my finger on it. Yeah, I often voiced it as, as traditional managers would voice it. The team is not doing what I want them to do. Yeah, which now sounds ridiculous, even saying things like that. But I hear it a lot from leaders. Yeah, I'm not the problem. It's the team that's not doing what they need to be doing. That we weren't. Yeah, we were something wasn't feeling right. Yeah, it wasn't working like I had envisaged, and it wasn't fulfilling not what I truly wanted. I mean, I had found it for more impact and for more autonomy, and the company was super dependent on me. Firstly, I mean, if I had left Ben, then surely a lot of things would have crumbled down. So yeah, this is not a sustainable impact that I was having with this company. Plus, I didn't have any autonomy. I mean, I was, all the big decisions were coming back to me or my husband. We were rarely going on holiday, and if at all, obviously with the laptop in one hand and the iPhone in the other. Um, I hardly had time to take time off when I gave birth to my three children. So this I found it for other things. I had got something else. I got actually the opposite. Um, so I tried a lot of different things, and a lot of different things I tried, they were putting just a plaster on it. Yeah, I tried different management structures and um, leading my management team in another way. And I implemented things like EOS, all these kind of things. Yeah, I was just trying, and none of it was really working. And one day, I um, I went to a talk, and somebody was talking about, I think it was Holacracy already. Somebody was talking about Holacracy, and I was like, "What? This exists?" I mean, I'm a management book junkie, yeah, and I hadn't heard about Holacracy. I've got 2 business masters, and I hadn't heard about self-managed structures, which I find ridiculous today. So I got interested by it, and I read Laloux's Reinventing Organizations,
Mm-hmm.
and I think from that point onwards, there was no turning back. There was no turning back because it's like when you see the trick in an illusion. Once you see that you understand the trick behind it, you can't see the illusion anymore. That's how it felt. So there was no turning back, and then I went for a time of reading as much as I could. Yeah, there were obviously books, a lot of books already out there, so I read a lot, and I exchanged with a lot of peers through the entrepreneurs organization. Found individuals that had tried implementing managed structures. I talked to a lot of people that thought they had self-managed uh, structures and actually didn't. It was also fascinating to see how different people understood, all these buzzwords of new work and human culture and self-leadership and holacracy. But anyway, and that was for me the point was like, okay, things need to I need to this is how I need to change things in my company.
And how much trial and error did it take?
It was so at first I didn't know how we would get there. Yeah. And that's also part of the process. You don't know how you're going to get there. So at the beginning, I said to everybody, hey, guys, team, we were about 80 people. We are, from tomorrow onwards, there's no more management. There's no more hierarchy. There's no more boss. There's a redistribution of power, and you are getting it back, and you can make decisions, and you are running this company as much as I am, as much as the management team is, and explaining all the the beautiful things behind it. And what that did is everybody broke out into panic because they didn't understand. They didn't understand what does that mean, and what does that mean for me, and what is actually going to change, and how do we, even if they did understand cognitively and emotionally what that meant, which a few did, but not many, it was still unclear what that would mean for our way of working. So this was the trial and error of the first phase of setting up change agent groups, and I wanted to empower people to figure out how are we going to be different, how are we going to be doing things differently. But they weren't there yet. They weren't able to take those decisions because they hadn't learned how to take decisions, and they didn't know, okay, but we're talking about things, but who's fundamentally saying this is the way it's going to be? How do we make collective decisions? So yeah, there was a big phase of, you say, trial and error, I'd say of chaos at the beginning, until we found Holacracy, and then implemented. And that's why I often say we are not a holacracy, because a holacracy is a process, it's a structure, and we implemented that structure, which is great, especially if you have, we were getting a lot of frustrations from the chaos that this trial and error had generated. So Holacracy gave us a very clear, this is how things are structured, and this is how roles are defined, and this is how meetings are done, and this is how we make decisions. But Holacracy is just a process. Yeah, it's really just a structure.
Yeah.
So we implemented that, but it's still the magic was still not happening. And this is where a lot of people I see, and I've talked to a lot of people that have tried implementing self-manager and have given back, given up. They go back to old ways because it doesn't work. And this is the point where a lot of people give up because they say, well, we've done the 10 steps of implementation, and it still doesn't work, because the fundamental thing to change is how we are, how we see each other, how we see ourselves, how we dare to take initiative, how we dare to say, you know what, I don't know, or I can't do this, or I don't trust to take this decision. I don't trust myself right now, or I have a conflict with you and I can't work with you, and we need to, before this and this is sorted out. And that's the important work, and that happened afterwards, and that was obviously a process. Yeah, it's because we're talking about personal development. We're talking about fundamentally changing the way we see ourselves, see others, and interact. But this is where the magic started happening. And by magic, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So, tell us what the magic is, and I have a question in mind, but please.
Yeah, for me, the magic is, and I'll give you an example, is seeing somebody that's, been sitting at their desk for years, doing the processes as they've been described, and just doing that quietly and clocking in and clocking out, and they're doing their work and they're doing good work. Seeing that from going from there to speaking up, to changing things, to starting new initiatives, to voicing, the elephant in the room, to creating long-term change for interpersonal relationships, but also for, the way we move forward as a company. That's the magic. Yeah, that's the magic. Seeing those people really get out of there. I put my head down at work, and I look up and see and be and change things around me so that they fit to how I need to work. And that's
so what I hear
that's
is
amazing.
What I hear is seeing people change from followers to leaders.
Yeah.
From culture fits to culture adds.
Exactly. And it's funny because people think, okay, in Holacracy you don't have leaders, or in self-managed you don't have leaders. And I say, no, we don't have a few. We have absolutely everybody in the
Everyone.
company
Yeah.
is a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have a leadership training, then the whole company is taking place because everybody's a leader of themselves and a leader of their peers.
So for those who are not familiar in Holacracy and are listening, how would you describe how the company is different to a traditional business?
So we don't have a hierarchy. We're structured in, it's a role-based structure. So as opposed to having a position or job description, there are roles which are described according to their accountabilities or their responsibilities and their purpose. Everything is purpose-based in a self-love company. And these roles are then formed into circles where combined roles helped to meet a same purpose. So, and you can have many roles. I'm passionate about a lot of different topics. So I loved having a creative role and a finance role. I love numbers and I love branding and creativity. So it allows, for me, one of the biggest magic of it is allows people to really have roles that fit their strength. It's really strength-based self-leadership, strength-based leadership, where I need the safety to do that and say, you know what, I'm not good at the numbers, so I'd rather not do the part of, I shouldn't be doing the part of analysis, financial analysis, for example. Somebody else should do that loves that really thrives on that. And I should be spending more of my time maybe on a more communicative or creative thing because this is where I thrive. And everybody has the chance to pick roles where they're really working within their strengths. And as a result, there's none of this, like, what we see in most jobs, this pain of having to do half your job because half of it is not fitting to what you like or who you are as a person.
And if you don't have managers, how do you deal with making decisions, doing performance reviews and coaching?
Yeah, so we have a very clear decision-making process. So it is so that if it's my responsibility and it doesn't affect anybody else, then I make the decision. So doesn't matter what it is. I'm not saying as a leader to the company, as just a person within my role. As a leader, as a person within my role, I can make the decisions. It's my accountability. If I see that there's a conflict because of it, I don't know, for example, it would be good for me as a sales person to give a discount to a customer, but this discount might negatively affect my colleague that's also a salesperson because their customer is going to get wind of it. How do I deal with that? We have a very, very clear integrative decision process where conflicts get forced. And in order to be able to do that, we need to have the psychological safety that everybody can speak their minds, speak their needs, speak their feelings. And then we come to a decision based on consent. And consent means we work out something that works out well without anybody having a
Disagreement?
Yeah, I'm looking for the word. I've got it in German in my head. And nobody having something against this decision. So if you have a good reason against the decision, then we still need to work on it. And if you don't have a good reason against, then it's safe, and it's safe enough to try. I mean, we work very much on the principle of good enough for now, safe enough to try. So we don't need to figure things out to 100%. It's okay if it's a work in progress, and as long as it's safe, let's try it. And if worst case, we fail and we try again, and we adapt. And through that, we manage to make so many decisions. And I mean, our tactical meetings had on average like 20 decisions being made. Yeah. And with everybody coming out of it saying, I feel good about every single one of these decisions. I can stand behind every single one of these decisions. And if something doesn't work out, I'll get voiced again and we'll look at what we need to tweak. So it's it allows us to be very, very adaptable, very fast. As I say, the decisions are made in the role themselves. Very often it doesn't even need to go to meetings because I'm making decisions because I'm empowered in my role to make a decision. And these are the things that then are being discussed if we might have a negative impact on somebody else, or to make sure that we come to even a better solution, because maybe with my expertise, I can only come to I can't come to a fully defined decision. And I think that's the magic of it as well, getting this collective intelligence into the decision process.
Which we often miss.
Yeah.
And I have this example of a president in our organization that had made a wrong staffing decision because they didn't fully understand the role. And as a result, they didn't consult, basically, everyone involved. And as a result, they essentially, trying to be careful not to name the person or not to be obvious about who it is. But as a result, I think it was a very poor staffing decision that will be cancelled next year. And that's because, they didn't really understand. They didn't consult, and they assumed they knew.
That often happens, because I was a long time a leader like that thought I know better. I've been here the longest, I've gained experience, I know better. And the moment I started realizing I don't, everybody else in this room knows better as well. And once you're open to that, that's where this is where really this collective intelligence can play a role, and better decisions get made.
I think one of my favorite quotes is the problem with communication is the illusion that's already taken place. I think it's by George Bernard Shaw. I was listening today to a podcast that was saying communication is what happens between people, between teams, between organizations. It's the in-between that's the key. It's not one person that starts talking, another person starts listening. It's a joint activity. And it requires two people for listening to take place. Not just one. Moving on to other topics, what were some of the mistakes you made along the way and you learned from? And what did you learn from those mistakes?
How long do you have? I made a lot of mistakes. Especially in this transformational journey, it was a self-transformational journey as well as transforming the company. So, I was making a mistake and then learning a lot from it. Whether it's, we just talked about communication. I wasn't communicating. I spent a long time not communicating enough because I thought, well, it should be obvious. Or even in the transformation period, I was thinking, our culture is based on trust. Just trust me. You don't need to know everything. Just trust me. Obviously, how can they trust me if they're not hearing what I truly feel and think? So that was that was one of the many. I think often trying to be, when we talked earlier about the male and female energy, often trying to be too tough. Too tough on myself, very often more so than too tough on other people. And being able to say, hey, I don't know, I can't solve this, I don't know where this is gonna go. And for me, that was we were reaching the inflection point of our cultural change when COVID hit, for example. And for me, it was one of my bravest moments. That we were in a food company, so logistics was a huge issue. We couldn't go into supermarkets anymore. Supply chain it was really struggling. And I'm basically telling the company, I don't know. I'm also scared. I'm scared. The only thing I do know is that we are together and we will find a solution because we always do. But what exactly the solution is and how we'll get over it, I don't know. I just know that we'll get over it. And that was a very, that for me shows a lot of like what I had done, than what I had learned before, not able to show that vulnerability or that weakness. Yeah. And also a lot of mistakes in operational stuff. I mean, that it seems like it's not so important when you're saying, okay, it's more important to be emotional and to be able to talk and communicate to people. But if what you're doing in the operations is not reflecting that, if there's a contradiction, um, and that's why I always say it needs a good balance of the mindset and the way of being, and also how the company is either structured or your processes or how your operations are, because otherwise they clash, and otherwise you're sending the wrong message.
Natasha, there's so much to talk about, but as usual, there's only this much time we can have the pleasure of discussing here and talking about culture. So, as we wrap, I have a couple of questions for you. Firstly, you've been on this journey of transforming yourself and transforming the culture in your company. If you look at leaders today who are less intentional about their culture, what would you say to them? What would they have to rethink?
They'd have to rethink their own importance. I think it's the moment that I realized that I'm not all important in my company, that it's not my baby. And I think that's also very much, I see a lot of parallels with parenting. Yeah, I think it maybe a few leaders could, that our parents could see that as well through their role as parents. You have a whole different way of being if you think you are my child and I will control what you become, rather than I'm just going to give you the room to become your best self. And this is, I think, that our role as leaders, not to force into something that it might not become, to give it that room and the room to our team and to be able to do that. So I think that's maybe it helps me. I know I learned a lot from my children. Maybe it helps to see that as almost a parenting of a company, rather than having to be the tough leader that needs to know always the answers and needs to be the sole responsible. That I learned that people will not take responsibility as long as I don't let it go. Yeah, and that frustrates me so much, seeing leaders saying people on my team don't take responsibility, and they're hoarding it. And of course, they're not going to take it unless they let go of it. And it takes a lot of bravery. It takes a lot of bravery to trust in others and trust in that process.
There's a benefit to being a parent, which leaders do not have, which is when your kids become teenagers, as you know from personal experience, the authoritarian leadership style, which is I'm more experienced, I'm more responsible, I'm going to tell you what to do, fails because the child stops listening. Employees would not do that because they still depend on their job and they fear of losing their job. But kids, they don't fear of retaliation. They have all the energy and all the courage to stand up to you and say, no, I'm gonna do my own thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And suddenly you realize that you need to either continue despairing as as authoritarian parent, or you need to find new ways of discussing as peers and listening to each other's needs and finding a way that works with you both, and not one that is intuitive to you because that's how you've always done things. So we don't get this advantage as leaders, but we get this, shock as parents.
Yeah, but maybe we could learn from that experience. And I've learned from one of my peers through his children the strategy of whatever happens, deal with it with love. There's and deal with it with the love. And I think it's not much different in a company. And although nobody dares to talk about love in a company context, but that's what it is. You can't lead anybody that you can't lead anybody until you love yourself, and you can't lead anybody that you don't love.
Right. Which also reminds me of this love, not fear, which our probably common acquaintance David Hensel has been championing, which is that at work we should be making decisions and working with people and seeing ourselves and others through love and not fear.
Yeah.
By deeply understanding, connecting with each other rather than putting up a shield, protecting ourselves and fearing of repercussions of our decisions.
Yeah.
So with that, and again with a little sadness on my part, because I'd like to keep these podcast shorts, but maybe we should do another one as well.
Very happy to.
So Natacha, where can people find out more about you? And what are some thoughts you'd like to leave us with that we can go and reflect on, or maybe go and look up?
So people can find me on my LinkedIn profile. I'm happy to get emailed and always share ideas when it comes to self-management. I mean, it's my biggest topic of passion, so I'm always happy to share my experience and spare. I'm still learning on this journey as well. Resources. I mean, I mentioned reinventing organizations. I know some people that read it and it didn't rock their world, but I know also a lot of people in this bubble of ours that it was the start of this. I'm interestingly enough just reading through all the books of Erich Fromm at the moment, that wrote in the 30s and the 40s about being and love and freedom, and it's so relevant to our times what he was writing already back then. It's made me define better understand better why there's this habit of people sacrificing their autonomy and their freedom within companies where they're ready to do that. And maybe last thoughts. I think and then maybe it's a good follow-up to mentioning Fromm's work. If we create environments where people feel like they belong, where there is this belonging or love, if we use that word, and where there is safety, then they can start satisfying those other needs of freedom, of autonomy, of doing their own thing, of daring, of really being adventurous and trying new things and being innovative. And I see that that's our role as leaders, to create that space so that they have a space to lean into those other needs that they can fulfill in the workplace, that they should fulfill in the workplace.
Natacha, thank you so much for your time and nuggets of wisdom and inspiration for us to think how we lead our businesses in counterintuitive ways and self-managed ways, and how this can help people shine, turn people from followers into leaders in every single corner of the organization. And to everyone that's been listening to us, thank you for giving us your undivided attention. If you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did here talking with Natacha, then do give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. Tell your friends about it, because that's how more people get to find out about their podcast and get to learn about how to lead more conscious cultures and businesses. And if you want to measure your culture so you can manage, you can go to rethinkculture.co. And like I love saying at the end of every podcast, keep leading and creating more conscious, I would say this time, and more fulfilling, happier organizations for you, but especially for those around you. Take care.